Okay. We have Marni Halasa today with Occupy Radio.
Yep.
Marni is an activist in Manhattan and candidate for, was it District
City,
7?
no, District 3, City
3.
Council.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But
how are
no,
you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. And like, thank you for asking me to be on to talk about the rent strike. I mean, it's interesting. I was just gathering like a couple facts that I'm going to look at. But the interesting thing is that you would have never known that there was this huge collective movement to engage in a rent strike. From the mainstream media.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely
there,
right.
there would there was really nothing on mainstream media, television, or any mainstream outlets. Last week everybody was very concerned about the protests about the stay-at-home order.
Hmm.
So we heard that, but you really never heard about this rent strike. Even I put something on Facebook, and some of my friends have been calling me, and they're like, "What? Was there some kind of what? I never heard about this." So I thought that was interesting. And apparently, just to give you some facts, as of May 1st, there is this sort of like rent strike. The Intercept reported 400 families, 1,500 rent units, and 5,000 people signed a pledge to not pay rent. And as of the first week of April, 1/3 of renters nationwide did not pay the rent. And that's 13 million people. So you have 13 million people that are not paying rent. You have 26 million people that are unemployed.
Hmm.
You have this $1,200 government stimulus check that is completely disorganized, and nobody's getting that. Um, and in addition, like the monthly rent in New York City, like for a one-bedroom apartment, is like around $3,000. And it's just like it's a complete disaster. So at least this is something that would actually give us relief. And I really like what AOC said. She said that, what did she say? She said something like, people are not going to pay. The elected officials do not have a choice. Like,
Right.
it's not a choice if people are going to pay, or maybe they'll pay, maybe they are
Mhm.
not going to pay. So
Right.
within that backdrop, let's give them some kind of relief.
Yeah. Just a few minutes ago, I read that Trump had said he's not interested in giving out any more checks to individuals. Um, you know, so he's not very hopeful. And
Right,
then
right, 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 right.
the
Yeah.
proposal that the city council had um, to cancel. I'm not sure whether it was to cancel rent or to have some kind of stoppage, but the sheriff came out yesterday and said that he couldn't enforce the law, that it had to come from the governor. And we know that
Right,
Cuomo is not going to go ahead with anything like that.
right,
Um,
right. So, I mean, this is what I've kind of heard. I've been just, making some phone calls to some of my contacts. And they sort of think that, well, first of all, they say, um, that the elected officials, like in Cuomo, they're really offering nothing to us. So, yes, Cuomo said there's a moratorium on evictions for 3 months and maybe longer, so the sheriff is not going to come and evict you because the housing courts are closed, right? But that still is really nothing. I mean, that still means that after the courts open up, that everybody is going to be responsible for paying back,
yeah,
3 months, 4 months, 5 months of rent.
mhm,
And if you've been out of work for like 3, 4, 5 months, you have no money to pay rent.
right,
So, the real issue is that the governor has to be pushed to pass legislation to cancel the rent. And that we need government intervention on our terms. So there is no negotiation. We were even in like a homelessness crisis, even before the pandemic, with 92,000 New Yorkers homeless, and people are one paycheck away from not being able to survive. So it's not just the canceling of the rent, but we need to think of a paradigm where, even before the pandemic, where people can live in dignity and live with housing, because housing is a human right.
right,
So
right.
yeah, yeah.
But what I'm fearful of is, and I keep mentioning this in all of the videos, uh, the three levels of government are cutting
Correct.
back on their programs, and
On
it's only
every
going to get worse.
I
And
know.
corporations are bound to cut back on staff later in the year when they want to raise their profits.
Right, exactly. And it's interesting, like when I talk to, one of my contacts that's involved in city and state government, what he sort of says is that, the way I look at it is taking from what he said. Okay, there's city council, there's the state, and then there's federal government. We all sort of know. I mean, what Ilhan Omar, she introduced a bill, the rent and working cancellation bill.
Mhm.
But that's going to be really hard to pass on the federal level, right? It's going to be really hard to get through Congress. With the Republicans and Trump, I mean, we don't really see relief in that respect. So if you go to the state is where I think we really have to pressure. We have to really pressure Cuomo, pressure other governors to pass legislation, because Cuomo is really that magic person that he can, like, with a stroke of a pen, he can sign something into law. But he needs to be pushed more. And from what I hear is that there's going to be a real concerted effort in the state and the assembly to really, really push the governor in the coming weeks. So that's one thing I've heard. I think that's hopeful. I hope it does happen. And if there's any way, what I'm curious is how do we activists, and candidates, what do we do to push? I mean, we push on social media. We give interviews. I talk to so many people during the day. I'm always making phone calls. But I'm wondering what is really, really effective. So that's one question I have. And I guess, people's answer is really just to keep pushing as much as you can. But I also think city council could do more. I think the mayor could do more. I think, yes, I mean, everybody says the city is starved and they don't have any money, but at the same time, I would like to see the city, and this is what I hear on Twitter, is to take money that's been repurposed for, the 4 new jails, the $8.7 billion for the new jails, the billions and the millions for Sunnyside Yards. I mean, those are 2 projects that we could totally just, nix and take that money, and what we need for housing, for the pandemic, for the healthcare crisis. I mean, these are, I think, common sense things that we can do, and also, on both the state and city side, I mean, could we get rid of the 421A tax subsidy for developers? I mean, it's those sort of things that I see, like, could we raise taxes on the wealthy? Julia Salazar's bill for the millionaires' taxes creates 4 tax brackets for the millionaires, so to, raise revenue. I mean, there are things that we can do now. And that's what I kind of don't hear. I don't hear any sort of talk about raising taxes on the wealthy and corporations.
No, just the other day, the governor came out and said he wasn't planning on raising any taxes.
Right, right. And that's a real problem.
It is a problem.
That's a real problem, so, so I guess, I mean, my next couple of weeks is going to be like, honing on him specifically, really pressuring him, because, I mean, he must live in a bubble, so I mean, like, it's kind of outrageous. So,
yeah. This is a time where the left, there's a moment in history. If we don't take advantage of this moment,
right,
we're never going to change anything.
Right. No, I agree. And kind of, there's another activist group I'm a part of called Occupy the Future. That's what we sort of talk about now. What's interesting, what's going on with workers' rights, is you see workers really collectively organizing. They're organizing and they're asking for higher pay, for hazard pay, for protective equipment. You see grocery clerks doing that. The Instacart. Those workers are doing it. So it's interesting. Like, I think what we see with workers is there is more collective organization. And I think you're going to see that more, because those essential workers are so important that they do have a lot more power now.
Control of their own unions, because there are cases all across America, and take the sweat bill, for instance, where the government just vetoed it in January. 1199 did not do a damn thing to support that bill. They were willing to give their constituents maybe $200 when these people were owed thousands of dollars.
Oh, wow. Right.
Union leaders are not trustworthy in my mind. So the
Right,
people
right.
have to take control of their own unions.
Right, right. No, that's true. That's true. And also just a general sense of, I think, also in the Occupy the Future group, we talk about, I think because people have not been getting relief. I mean, so I'm out of work and I just got my $600 unemployment, for 1 week. I got it like last Thursday night, which I was like thrilled for. But then I'm thinking to myself, they owe me 6 weeks of back pay. So it shouldn't have been 600. It should have been 3,600.
Right.
And then, I'm waiting for that $1,200. So it's sort of like, I think are going to start to get angrier, and I think they are going to look for other avenues on how to organize. And so
Yeah.
I think you're going to see that more and more. And I think once we really see that pressure will, it's like that catalyst that, the a pebble drops and it knocks the mountain down,
Mhm.
so I think, and that's usually how things go.
Yeah. But
um
right before you came on, though, I was reading something where the GOP in the Senate are so hyperventilated about the additional money that some people are getting in their unemployment checks. Like it's going to bring the world down.
I know.
How do you live on unemployment? I was on unemployment several years ago before I
Right,
retired. You
right.
can't live on
You cannot
unemployment.
live. Yes, yeah,
So
yeah.
these people are bitching about a few $100 that these people may have extra, but they won't have it in their pocket. They'll be
Right.
paying the bills.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. It's really disgusting. I mean, like it's
But it's this perception that government has that middle
yeah.
and lower class people, all they do is sit, drink beer, and smoke pot. It's a
Right.
ridiculous thought.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, I just think that, I think when people get angry, hopefully they'll channel that energy into organizing. Or I just think, things start to happen when people get a little bit more desperate. And I think you're going to see that. And I think once we start to see that, which is I think already happening right now, hopefully that will be real pressure. But I think also, I tweet a lot. I call my electeds a lot. I try. There's a little bit of anger when I tweet, so there's a little bit of that public humiliation I think that works.
Mhm.
And I just think, like, you're doing more of these interviews. I'm doing my interviews, tweeting. I think, this will, hopefully galvanize us to do more. Um, what's interesting, though, I have to say, like with the night attendants at Fulton and Elliott Chelsea, what I've been doing is I do these interviews like you. I tweet them out to the reporters and the electeds. And with several of the Fulton tenants, we did that on a regular basis, and they said they wanted hand sanitizer, they wanted masks. They were seeing NYCHA workers go into their apartments and try to repair something, but they didn't have masks on. They were also hearing from their senior neighbors and
Mhm.
disabled neighbors that they weren't getting services, they weren't getting food. So once we started to tweet that out, literally within like 3 weeks to 4 weeks, those issues started to get rectified a bit. So I think, I just think the more we scream about this, the more pressure it puts on them. So I think once you sort of hear that it's getting kind of, the electeds are making some kind of effort to fix that, I think you sort of, can surmise that what you're doing is influencing the conversation at least.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. And
Mm.
the more people we get aggravated, let's say,
Yes.
with
Yeah, I agree.
information, they don't really need much from us to get them going. But the
Mm.
idea is we need to organize.
Yes.
You need to
Yes.
knock on your neighbor's door and say, "Hey, I can't afford the rent. What about
Right.
you?"
Right.
And talk
Right.
about it.
Right. No, that's true. That's true because everybody really is in the same boat.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. And also getting other people who are not activists, getting them involved. I have some friends, they're calling me up and they're like, what can I do? I was like, you know what? I said, get a Twitter account. the electeds are very, very worried about being publicly shamed on Twitter. We've heard that, some of our tweets are considered to be bombs because, when you really speak the truth and you really call out an elected official, they really feel it and they get worried about it, especially if you hashtag their name on Twitter. So I think, I think understanding how to use social media platforms so you can get your message across and it can amplify your message, I think is really important. I've always believed one or two or three people can really make a difference. So that's one way to do it. Yeah. And I have to have hope. I still have to have hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
But we need to do something to change the formats in the social media, because so many people are just knocked off, as you said. Look at Howie Hawkins. He's running for president, and his presidential campaign was knocked off. What is that? You're denying people the ability to speak the truth, or at least speak their mind, which everybody has a right to speak their mind.
Correct. Yeah. And give voters a choice.
Right.
Everybody should be able to participate in a democracy. If they want to run for office, they should run for office. Their Twitter, I remember he also said his Twitter account was suspended. I mean, it really is ridiculous. I myself, a number of city council candidates have experienced this kind of retaliation. And I mean, it's so interesting to me because we're just small candidates. It's well, of course I hope to win, but the incumbents have everything. They've got the money, the volunteers, the infrastructure, the staff, they have everything. But they really get worried when you come along and you call them out. And a lot of the candidates, from the third parties, or you're running as an independent, or you're part of that progressive wing of the Democratic Party that really wants to change things. The establishment gets really worried about it. It always really fascinates me, so, but it shows that, one or two people can really make a difference, because once your narrative gets out there, and it does, then it has the, the real potential to, make them look bad. And if they're always running for re-election for some kind of public office, then, they don't want that narrative to get legs. And, honestly, usually it does, so.
Well, I still have the video of you and Luis Flores fighting to get 2 minutes of speaking time at a CUNY.
That's ridiculous.
And
that was Councilmember Ben Kalos's event, and we had to really force our way in. And I remember that it was actually a beautiful and profound thing. But I mean, they would not give us any time, and Luis was really only asking for 2 minutes or less. I said, we're even let's do give us 1 minute. But the problem was that we had about 10 Fulton tenants there. So for them to be there, for the forum to be about overdevelopment, and to have people that were directly affected by RAD could possibly be evicted, to not give those people a voice, is just it really shows you what city council is about, so yeah.
Yeah. But in talking about that, it makes me think, though, that, the pandemic has put so many other issues on the sideline. And
right.
I haven't heard anything spoken about NYCHA in a while from mass media.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. I mean, some local media has picked up on the fact that NYCHA is in a really precarious position because there was the Bronx Documentary Center. Mike Camber actually did a really amazing documentary. This came out, I think, at the middle to end of, I think, middle of March, but basically saying that NYCHA residents never really got any real information about the pandemic. So, this is in the Bronx, which is the poorest congressional district in the nation. There are a lot of seniors, a lot of people that don't have Wi-Fi, many people that don't have a television or Wi-Fi. And there was very little information. So what he did is, with a group of people, because his family lives in public housing, he did a whole flyering campaign. And when he would ask people, like, do you know what social distancing is? Do you know about the coronavirus? A lot of people didn't know. And a lot of people, and sometimes there's people will say, well, how could they not know? It's like, well, a lot of people don't have Wi-Fi and they don't have television sets.
Right.
A lot of people don't live the way, other people live. So
Exactly.
that was really interesting. And that was published in the New Yorker. And that video really made Greg Russ and Bart Schwartz look really, really bad. So I think, and also Greg Smith from the City did a really interesting article that pushed Lynn Patton to actually give masks to NYCHA tenants. So, I mean, you see like those stories. I mean, it could be one story, but once it gets out there, I think it really does like pressure the city officials to do something. So at least that's a positive thing.
Yeah, but I live a block from the projects here in Red Hook,
Mm-hmm.
and friends I have that lived there complained about the same thing. They didn't have any, and they put up
Correct.
their own signs about social
Yes, and
distancing.
I should tell you, I'm doing an interview today with Cynthia Tibbs,
Mhm.
and she's a TA president at the
Yeah,
Wise Towers,
yeah, I know who she is.
and she told me also, like, we're going to do an interview today, how she requested some supplies from the city. The city delivered it, but the city delivered these huge box. The army came and dropped it off right in front of her doorstep. So now one person, is responsible for distributing supplies to the NYCHA tenants. I mean, really, one person. I mean, she's not. I don't think she's that young. I mean, it's just crazy how they just do the bare minimum
Yeah,
for Black and brown people of color who are in vulnerable positions. So that definitely needs to be called out. And also with the Fulton tenants and Elliot Chelsea, I mean, they're all like, you know what? With this pandemic, RAD is off the table. And Jackie Laura from Fulton is like, I don't even want to hear about RAD. I go, I don't want to hear about it. And nobody here ever wants to hear about it again. And, they went to all those working group meetings. They were all very polite. They all sat through everything. And at the end of the day, they were like, it was bullshit. It was total bullshit.
mhm.
And in the working groups, nobody ever listened to them. I mean, Lewis and I went to 3 of those groups, and I mean, it was amazing to see like them cry out that they don't want to be privatized, and how it was just, even people like Legal Aid, Community Service Society, Manhattan Board, Community Board 4, all those people were there, and they really didn't advocate for them. And to me, it was so disturbing, and also really fascinating to see, because really as a layperson, I mean, I ran for council like, a couple years ago, but really I don't have a history of this kind of activism. And to me, it was so surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, I just couldn't even believe it. It was like such overt racism. So
Yeah, there's no way, I
mhm,
tell everybody that I'm so glad that I grew up in Brooklyn. It was a very diverse community.
mhm.
But still, even with that, there is racism, and that's
There's a
part of it.
lot, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've never grown it. I mean, I'm half Filipino, half Jordanian, and so I always had a very diverse household and like family, and uh, you know, it's hard. Like, I never see people. I always see people by like what they do, and like you know their relation to me, and it's never like what colors their skin. Like, I'm more interested, like, does this person empathize? Do they have compassion? Do they
Mhm.
think like me? Do they like my, if I do they like my ideas? Like that's what I like.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I mean, I don't care if they're purple, but if they agree with me politically, I'm like, oh my god, that's great. So
Yeah. But that
that's
hits
a lay
another
person,
subject,
though. That's somebody who, like, I've been called very, very green.
but that hits another subject though, because
Mhm.
and I think you and I may have talked about it offline at one point, where you don't have to agree with everyone politically to still like them.
Yes, correct. Yes, yeah.
And so many times that doesn't work that way.
Right, right.
We're individuals. We should have individual thoughts, and we shouldn't be persecuted because we want to vote for that person and not the person
Right.
that you want.
Right. I mean, it's funny. I have a very good friend from journalism school who is a staunch conservative. And oh, we would have these political, like, tete-a-tetes at like 3 o'clock in the morning after a night of drinking, like when we were at the J school at Columbia. And, she was the sole conservative and in our journalism class. And, people were like, oh my gosh, like Marni, how can you, like you, I
Mhm.
was like, but she was like my best friend. And somehow we connected on like so many of other levels, but boy, did we have like heated discussions. But yeah, and to this day, she's a really good friend of mine. So it's amazing.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, if the
So
rest of the world could be that way, that's all right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in the next couple of weeks, really pressuring Cuomo, and what I really want to do is get this narrative of like repurposing money that the city has given to these projects that don't even need to happen, especially now, and just pressuring Cuomo, and hopefully the person that I spoke with, hopefully they're correct in that the Assembly and the Senate are really going to pressure Cuomo to do something.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it works. So
Yes,
how's the
yeah.
campaign going? It's
It's
inching along?
going. It's going. Now I'm at the point where I'm trying to create a board of kind of like everyday citizens and activists
Mhm.
to kind of help me with my campaign. And I thought like, wow, in a pandemic, people are so busy with their own lives, they're not interested. But what I've kind of experienced like the exact opposite, that people are like, oh my God, please run because something needs to be done. So
Yeah.
so
And I
actually,
think, it's good because, and I've said this to you before, it's
mm,
that you're an activist. You're seen out, you're on dozens of my videos. You're seen
right.
out in the street doing something, so people can look at you and know that you're not running because, you know, it's something that you really care that much about, but it's the issue.
It is totally, totally. And I think
Yeah.
also what I would like to put out there is that like any activist that really believes that they want to get their platform out, they, want to really change the conversation, they really want to have an influence. I think actually running for office is probably the number one thing one person can do.
Mhm.
So, I'm not saying that it's not challenging because it's super challenging. And what's really challenging is creating that kind of election infrastructure. So it's not easy, but I think if somebody, really believes in their ideas, I think this is really the number way to get them out there, because what you will have is, because once you run and you get on the ballot, then what a lot of the media does is they say, okay, we're going to put, all the candidates' editorials in like one spot, so all the voters have a choice to read what your ideas are. And I think that's really powerful. And several City Hall insiders said to me, were it not for my campaign in 2017, Corey Johnson would have never given this SBJSA a public hearing, and it
Mhm.
was because I really pushed that. So I really think, I mean, I would really encourage everybody who's an activist, and to have that kind of activist mentality than somebody who's like a lobbyist for the real estate industry. But if you really have that inclination to really help people with ideas that are really going to help people, then I think people should like jump in.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, my wife
Mm.
ran,
I
uh,
know.
years ago for city council, and
Yeah.
she talked about broken windows, and no one had even mentioned anything like broken windows before.
Right.
And again, we're a block from NYCHA, where people are, hounded every day,
Hmm.
uh, and no one else talked about it. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
you have to bring
And
up this
see, and
issue.
and just look how that conversation has evolved. I mean, she was talking about it when nobody was talking about it.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, obviously, she definitely had like an impact. So, yeah. So, I mean, I should say, I mean, people can go to my website. I'm still kind of working on it, but it's up and running. It's www.marnieforcitycouncil.com, and yeah, I'm getting excited about it. So it'll be interesting.
good, good. Well, I appreciate you coming on and spending
Yeah,
the time.
thank you. We'll be
You're
talking
right.
more.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
Well,
right.
well, I told you it's open up anytime you want to join in. So,
Okay, great, great.
all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, you know what? I have another idea. Maybe if you want to have if you want to have like a couple candidates and we do like a small business forum or a NYCHA forum or actually, Mike, I'm actually really interested in figuring out another paradigm for rent. I was talking to actually some Green Party folks about this morning, but I mean, 30% of rent for NYCHA is like for people who are low income
Right.
is way too much money. And I've heard that from them. I've also heard that from the senior center on Ninth Avenue in my district. They've been saying, but also just some of my friends that are making, you know, 70, 80, 90,000, like paying 30%, if you have a family, if you have children, if you want to save for their education, if you have an elderly parent that's sick and needs help with medical bills, medical
Mhm.
debt, student debt, I mean, like 30% of rent is too much.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
And, small businesses need relief. I mean, so I'm trying to think of, and I'm working with some policy people about that because that needs to change. And that really affects not just the low income, but a good portion of the middle class.
Yeah. It also
So
goes for, we talk about affordable housing. So we get people a few cheaper rents to pay, but they still have to live in the community where to buy food is too high.
correct.
So when we look at affordable housing,
Aristides, 25th, oh my God, 26th and 8th Avenue. Oh, terrible. John Katzmatitis, forget about him.
yeah,
Oh,
but we need places for people to go shop, even if
yes,
it requires a card. You get a special card based on your income level, and you
yes,
get discounted based on that card.
correct.
It's a simple process.
And that's easy to implement too.
Yes.
That's a great idea. Yeah. So maybe I'll incorporate that.
Okay. Yeah.
Snap.
There's my advice for the day.
Okay,
Mm,
exactly.
mm. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today.
Okay,
Mm,
definitely. And Mike will be in touch.
okay. All
All
right.
right. Thank
Okay.
you.
All
Okay,
right.
bye.
Bye-bye.